Good morning. We continue today thinking about the covenant that God made with Abram. Abram and his father Terah were living in Ur of the Chaldees, and there they hear the call of God to move out of their civilized city and move down into Canaan and live there in tents. They set out from Ur of the Chaldees. They traveled north to a place called Haran, and there from Haran they lived for some time. Terah is probably too old by now, and he stays in Haran and he dies in Haran. But Abram has also heard this call, and he and his nephew Lot cross over with their wives and travel down into the land of Canaan and set up camp in a place called Shechem. Now when they arrive in Shechem, God says to Abram very simply, he says, I am going to bless you. In your seed, singular, all families of the world are going to be blessed. I'm going to give you this land in which you're now living. He doesn't define the area, but he says, I'm going to give you this land in which you're now living. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. I will protect you. I will be your reward. And Abram believes God and trusts God. Abram is known as the father of all those who by faith believe God even when it seems to be impossible. See, Abram was quite elderly even by now. He was about in his 70s. And the years pass, and Abram and Sarai have no children at all. Then God comes back to him and he sees him again. And God speaks to him about this family he's going to have, about the descendants he's going to have. And Abram says, I'm getting quite old. And God takes him outside and says, look at the stars in the sky. He said, I'm going to give you so many children, just that you can't count the stars in the sky, so you will not be able to count the descendants I'm going to give you. And what is more, I'm going to give it to you through your wife Sarai. Abram believes. Abram trusts. That's the point. He trusts. He has faith when it seems to be impossible. Later on, he gets about the age of 86. Now he's really getting old, and so is Sarai getting very old. And God appears to him again, and now he makes a more definite covenant with him. He is still trusting, and God is pushing him to test him on this trust. A covenant is made with the sacrifice of animals. Animal bodies are cut in two, and this was a common way of making a covenant. The animal's body was cut in two, and then the people making the covenant would walk between the pieces, solemnly declaring what they were going to do. On this occasion, something different happens. Because Abram, having cut the bodies in two, God comes to him and puts him to sleep. That's very important. God puts him to sleep. And then God himself moves between the pieces of the sacrifice. See, what God is saying is, I am making this as a covenant, an unconditional covenant. I'm making a promise to Abram that I'm going to give him this land. And he defines the land. He says, it'll be all the way from the Nile to the Euphrates. A large tract of land. I will give him this land. Oh yes, his children will probably have to leave the land on many occasions. They will go down into Egypt and they will live there for 400 years. They'll be taken away under Nebuchadnezzar. They'll be scattered after the birth of Jesus and dispersed throughout the world. But the covenant will still hold. This land will belong to them. And Abram does not have to enter into the covenant himself. God is making it with Abram at this time. He also changes his name. He says, no longer will his name be Abram, which means exalted father. Your name will be Abraham, father of a multitude. I'm going to make this promise, and this promise is going to hold. Abram believed. And again the years pass. And Abram is now 99 years of age, and he is still believing. And God comes to him again and tells him again, I am going to give you a child by Sarai, and his name will be Isaac. Gives him the name even. And he says, through that child, you will be blessed. I will come back, he says later, in a year's time, and I will give you this child. You'll be 100 years of age, and I will give you this child. One interesting little thing at this point, when God visits him, and 3 people visit Abram, and Jesus or God is one of them, and he says this to him, Sarah is listening in to see what these visitors are saying, if you read the story. And she laughed to herself. She didn't laugh out loud. She laughed to herself. And God says, don't laugh, Sarah. It's going to happen. It'll happen in a year's time. And we'll come back to that tomorrow.